everyone. Welcome into the Boys and Girls Show. I'm Jane Slater from the NFL Network, joined by my co-host and NFL Network producer, Bobby Belt. Bobby, Cowboys get a win on the road against the New Orleans Saints, but probably the biggest question mark we've got coming out of it is, what's up with Zeke? We know that the right knee has been an issue, but is it now an issue for this offense?
Yeah, I mean, he's not healthy. And it's not just something where it's like, he doesn't look healthy. I mean, we've had several instances of Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones, Zeke himself talking about he's hurt. He's not, 100%. And it's funny, on the one long run he had, or the longest run he had against New Orleans, it was like a 10-yard run to the outside.
Was his longest.
He looked like it was a very labored run to the outside. And I think it seems to make a lot of sense as to why we're seeing some of the struggles is because he's just not there health-wise. The production has slipped a lot since the first, few weeks of the season. And I think it's made it tough on the passing game. And obviously the issues with the offensive line haven't helped. Mm-hmm. If you're not opening holes for a guy who's a little gimpy, then, you're going to kind of get the results that you get. I think the biggest sign that he's not feeling great is the fact that when he scored a touchdown on Thanksgiving, he didn't even think about jumping in the kettle.
Didn't celebrate hardly at all.
Nope,
that was something that really stood out to me.
Kind of stood there and that's totally unlike him. And so he's not feeling very well.
You talked about Zeke hasn't been Zeke as of late. Let's look at the 4-game stretch. 14 rushes for 41 yards against the Falcons, 9 for 32 in the loss to the Chiefs, 9 for 25 in the overtime to the Raiders, and then 13 for 45 in the win over the Saints. And as you said, the longest 10-yard run in the fourth quarter. You look sort of here at Tony Pollard, and you of course look at the 58-yard touchdown run that he had, and you find yourself wondering, well, should you give Pollard more reps? I think Pollard had 7 in the last one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, seven carries. I think this is a seniority thing. You and I were talking about this before the show started. There is a little bit of what feels like a deference to Jason Witten. Now, I will tell you something that stands out to me about...
to Ezekiel Elliott.
To Ezekiel.
Similar to the way Jason Witten was for years.
But the one thing that stands out to me about this particular staff is I don't see that deference holding for long. In other words, I think there's going to be some internal discussions here in the next couple of weeks. Now, Jerry Jones kind of cushioned this on 105.3 The Fan, talking about, this team has now they played 3 games in 12 days. They've had 10 days of rest before they play Washington on Sunday. I just think that you're going to start seeing them give Pollard a little bit more pop here heading into the stretch of December.
I think with this I would have rested him in the game against New Orleans. And I think that it's probably, I would rest him this week against Washington. Let him get the 10 days leading up to Washington. Let him get the Washington game off. Let him get a full 17 days. I know they probably don't want to do it.
Bobby, this is a divisional opponent who's 2 games back. To your point, they should have done it against the Saints when the Saints literally did not have their defensive ends. They had hardly anything on offense. And yet, when I was there watching that game in New Orleans, I thought the Cowboys should have pulled away a lot quicker and a lot faster.
Well, and I mean, the Saints have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. You knew you weren't going to get much out of that anyway. And so I don't know. I think that there is something to be said about, I know what he gives in pass protection and things like that, but if you want to be at full strength going into the playoffs, you're not going to get that first round bye. It doesn't look like. So I think if you want to be full strength going into the playoffs and be as complete a product as you can, you are going to have to find time where Zeke can heal and rest that knee so that you can get the best version of him.
Well, we're looking at this NFC playoff picture. It's kind of hard to believe now that we're looking at the Washington football team right here in the thick of things with the Rams that have lost their last 3. You've now got San Francisco, that's your 7th seed. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have looked at this playoff picture being what it is right now. Real quick, before we get your thoughts on this playoff picture, do us a favor, subscribe if you love the Cowboys. You obviously do if you're tuning into this one. YouTube.com/Cowboys TV. Like we said, we're learning all about how this YouTube thing works, and it's engagement. Engagement keeps us on the air for you, and we want to bring you all the news and notes, especially as we head into the thick of things in December. When you look at this playoff picture, what stands out to you, Bobby?
I mean, I don't think Dallas is in a position at this point to get that first round bye. With the way the schedules are stacking up for every team heading into the, this last 5-game stretch, Dallas isn't going to get any sort of a rest heading into the playoffs that you'll be able to take advantage of with Zeke. It is looking more and more likely like you're going to get the Rams as your opponent, depending on how they play, depending on how Tampa is able to play down the stretch without, Antonio Brown missing a few games. But I think that, the way it stacks up, the way you're going to need to play football in January and February, playing it more physical, you want the best version of Zeke. And so that's where, we come down to this question that I think the Cowboys are asking, fans are asking of what is it, that you should do about this? Should you find a space here sometime at the end of the season to get Zeke rest?
All right, we want to get your thoughts on this. Should Dallas rest Zeke versus Washington? Type Y for yes. Type N for no. So as we're talking about the injury to Ezekiel Elliott, the good news is, at least on the defensive side of the ball, Bobby, reinforcements are coming. We saw Randy Gregory, on the sidelines ahead of the Raiders in the warm-ups. I saw him there, of course, in New Orleans. He looks like he's been ready to go for the last 2 weeks, but he is coming back against Washington. We saw DeMarcus Lawrence getting some snaps in there against the Saints, and it looks like Neville Gallimore is also on the way here. What do you think this does for the defensive line, specifically Micah Parsons? And fascinating note, this group, Micah Parsons, Randy Gregory, DeMarcus Lawrence, have only played one game together this year. I think only 28 snaps, which is hard to believe. And I loved the quote from Dan Quinn this week saying, if you had told me at this point in the season what our record would be in the absence of these guys, they've had 33 defensive players that they have played on that side of the ball. He said he would have normally said OS. I don't know what I can and cannot say on YouTube. What are the yes, okay, just, I never know. But he said instead it's, that's some cool SHIT. So there you go. I can say shit. Ooh, God, I love saying it. Shit. I love that mentality because I get the sense that that's what the mentality has been of this defensive side of the ball. And it's so crazy that we're talking about defense, given the fact that offense has been what the Cowboys have really hung their hat on the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think it's just the Cowboys have been on defense most days, most games this season. The offense has been the better unit, I think. But there's been so much less variability. You know exactly what you're getting from the Cowboys defense. You can kind of reliably expect what they're going to do. They're going to generate turnovers. They're going to get some sacks. They're going to allow some chunk plays. But they're also going to, bend a little bit and not break. They're not going to allow a ton of points. I mean, you can see it there up there. They're, allowing a lot of yards, a lot of passing yards, a lot of total yards, but then they're tied for 12th in scoring defense. And that, at the end of the day, is all that teams care about, is their scoring defense. And so, I think this will be a great opportunity for the defense to continue to grow and to strengthen with getting Randy and DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons all into the fold together. It'll allow Micah Parsons to freelance a little more at linebacker. And I think on third downs, you'll see a lot more of, Randy and Micah are standing up off the edge. They're coming. It allows DeMarcus Lawrence to kind of get inside and take advantage of, those guards. And he's a really difficult matchup for a guard to block. And so I think that this will be a great opportunity to get a lot more sacks on third down passing opportunities, getting all three of them in here. And potentially could be a good opportunity to help get Trayvon Diggs some more interceptions. If you're rushing these throws, if you're affecting the quarterback, with this pass rush unit, then, you can see a lot more turnovers in addition to the sacks.
Friend of the show, Leighton Vander Esch. He looked a little confused out there against the Saints. What has been your assessment of Leighton so far this year?
I don't think Leighton's been the same player. I think injuries have just derailed his career. He was such a special player. His rookie year was such an important part of the defense. And I just think these injuries that he's had, it's just taken a toll. And I just don't think physically he's the same guy anymore. And so it's sort of a similar story to what Jalen Smith ran into. Jalen Smith just had physical limitations that he wasn't going to be able to be the same player anymore. And I think that's why they like Micah Parsons' flexibility and why they're hesitant to put him at full-time edge, is because they need him there to make sure they're not getting gashed in the run game or things like that. And so luckily you've got a player like Micah Parsons who is so adept at doing everything that you need to do. Brian Baldinger had a great video breakdown that showed him against the Saints, carrying receivers down the field, making plays in the run game, getting in there as a pass rusher, working as a spy against Taysom Hill. He's a very, very special player that I think the defense kind of centers around. Everything that the Cowboys do flows out from how are we using Micah Parsons.
Well, and it's interesting when we talk about these injuries, I even said going back to last year, if Mike Nolan and Jim Tom Sula had to figure out what to do with Micah Parsons, I think his rookie season would have looked very, very different. And I also wonder if you actually did have Randy Gregory in this year and DeMarcus Lawrence without some of the injuries, would we have seen them get as creative as they did? And so, I like to typically find the silver lining in a lot of these things, but I think what you're able to do is you're seeing a skill set of some of these guys that you wouldn't otherwise see. And I do think that it can be very discouraging for guys like Leighton, who I'm sure thought with Jalen Smith getting shipped off here that he would have emerged as the next man up. And it's just, to your point, I want it for the guy. He's a special guy. We've enjoyed having him on our show. It's just, I don't know if it's the coaching staff, the locker room, physical limitations, but it just doesn't feel like it's all there for him this year.
No, and I think we're in the final stretch of Leighton Vander Esch's Cowboys career. I don't see him coming back here. And so I think a fresh start would do everybody some good. But, I got to imagine one of the more frustrated people in all of this is Leighton himself. I'm sure he's frustrated, not, pointing the finger outwardly about, I'm not being used right. I'm sure he's frustrated with himself and the way he's played.
Does he go now to Cowboys West and head to the Raiders? And
I mean, yeah, what is it? It's always Raiders.
Those guys again.
It always seems like the Chiefs get a bunch of cast-offs. Anthony Hitchens went there, and they have Charvarius Ward, and I think they scooped up Joey Ivy at one point, Damian Wilson. Mm-hmm. So that's where the linebackers have typically gone. So maybe we see Kansas City. Maybe Steve Spagnuolo is able to, find some use for him out there with the Chiefs.
At least in Vegas, he'd be close to Idaho and hunting and home.
Exactly. Let him feel a little more comfortable.
We wish good things for him. We wish good things for this show. So to do that, we need you to subscribe at youtube.com/Cowboys TV. All right, we were able to dive a little bit into the NFC East and the NFC picture. We're going to dive into that a little bit more later in this week. We appreciate you tuning in for this one. But yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on this NFC East playoff picture, so you're definitely going to want to tune in for the next episode. For myself and for Bobby Belt, we'll see you on the next.